Last video went on a little bit long, so I ended up having to cut it down. So this should be part 3. Last part, we're going to be installing finally the M3 subframe. After that, we'll be installing the Seems Legit one-piece drive shaft. La Hacienda. Shit's good. So, shouldn't be too difficult. Everything's out the car. Had a slight issue with my brake lines, but I think I pretty much figured out a way to get around all that. But yep, gotta take the spring purchase, put it on the M3 subframe, and then pretty much lift it back up in there and be ready to rock. So if you've seen the first 2 videos, thank you for watching those. If you're here seeing this now, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, comment, interact. You got any questions, you want to know anything? Hell, if you just want to crack a joke, go ahead and go for it. So tune in, follow me on this journey. Shit's good. All right, what we got here is the Seem Legit Garage one-piece drive shaft. Comes with these parts. You've got the actual drive shaft itself. And also you get these 2 brackets, and they come in these plastic bags here. They come with the one that bolts to the differential comes with a set of 10 bolts, and they are an 8mm hex head. Six of the bolts go into the differential, and the other 4 bolts go into the drive shaft flange here. And then you have the bracket that goes onto your transmission, and it comes with 7 bolts. 4 of them, like on the differential end, bolt in to the flange on this end, and the 3 big bolts, they bolt into the output flange that's on your transfer case transmission. The 3 bolts that bolt onto that take a 10mm hex head, but the bolts that go on to the drive shaft flange take the same 8mm. Then I want to show y'all how ghetto my subframe reattachment system is going. But yeah, it's going. Got a little bit of everything over here. Jacks, jack stands, everything. I called my guy, but he said he ain't getting off of work until later. You know, I'm impatient and hard-headed, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and get this thing in there, solo mission. But yeah, it's taking some doing. Well, after some struggling and 1,000 jacks and jack stands, everything's in. Haven't torqued anything down yet, but that'll be coming. All right, let's talk about the Seem Legit Garage one-piece drive shaft kit. Now, I'm about 99% sure that this would only pertain to people with XI model, all-wheel drive model, 335s, but the issue was with this mounting plate that goes on to the transfer case, transmission, pretty much the output yoke. So the issue was that this will slide on. Well, the issue pretty much starts with I believe this thing's called like a gimbal or something like that, Guibo, some shit like that. Basically, this is bolted on the output, and it's held on with 3 bolts like these with nuts on the back that hold it in place. You unbolt this from the output and you put this bracket on in place. Now I'm assuming that with regular rear-wheel drive 335, the bolts that hold on to it are this size and have bolts of the similar size. But if you take a look at the size of the bolts, you can see the ones that are used in the XI model are a bit thinner. So pretty much what I did, I was called, I let them know what was going on, and I took the bolts. There are several bolts that hold the drive shaft itself and the plate that bolts onto the differential. They come in this size, and they just happen to be the same size and thread pitch. So I bolted it on and they fit. The only issue that was worrying me is that there's a little bit of play, a little bit extra play between these smaller bolts and the ones that are meant to go through there. There's pretty much not any play. So I got a hold of Mike Pagano, no relation to Chuck Pagano, he said. And he said, not sure if you can see here, on there that sits inside of the output, and I should be able to get away with using those smaller bolts. So Mike, being the super cool guy he is, what he did was he sent me a few more of these bolts so that to make up for the 3 that I had to use to bolt into here. But along with these bolts, you'll have to use these 3 nuts that came with the bolts that were in the Guibo. So what you do is you put the plate on there, put these through here, and on the back side you put the nuts on there. He said there wasn't really a specific torque specification for these bolts and stuff, but he said just for an extra piece of security, just use red Loctite. So as you can see, I got that here, and I'm pretty much ready to put the drive shaft on and bolt everything down. Also, another note is if basically I just want to say, if you're doing this job on a XI model, call Seems Legit. Let them know that you're working specifically on an XI model, because the drive shaft has to be a bit shorter because the transfer case takes up a little bit more room than a normal transmission. And you know, the problem I'm having, I'm hoping they took note of it so that anybody else in the future with an XI that gets ready to do this won't run into the same problems I had. You might even want to mention this video if you're getting an idea from it, and let them know that, you know, you seen on the video that you need these different bolts. You can't use the standard bolts that they put in the kit. So something to think about. Let's get back to work. First thing you can do is put the mounting plate on the differential. See here, you got 6 bolts. You need a 8mm hex head socket. I got these guys in here, but they're not bolted on yet. But I'm gonna pull these out real quick, put some thread locker on there, and then put it back. Alright, once you get the plate, bolts in pretty tight, red Loctite. Next thing you might want to address is the brake cable, e-brake cable. Kind of seems like there might be enough clearance, but just to be on the safe side, I would say bend these out a little bit so that you get a little bit more clearance, just to make sure the drive shaft and the e-brake cables don't, you know, accidentally bump into each other. Don't want that. Next thing you want to work on is the transmission side. You got 3 bolts, holes in here. Just take your thread locker. Don't have to put a whole lot on there. Screw it in. And then take your bolt. And screw the bolt and the nut in there together. Repeat that on all 3. You don't remember, bolts that were on the back side are 16, and I mean the nut on the back side is a 16, and the bolt that goes through it, you need your 8mm. That's how you tighten that down. All right, once you get the rest of the bolts in place, then you want to take the drive shaft itself and line it up with 4 bolts on the 2 mounting plates. Make sure you don't drop the drive shaft on your face, because that would hurt a lot. It's probably a 2-man job, but I'm gonna do it by myself because I'm hard-headed. Alright, as you can see, I got 2 of the bolt holes lined up. Make sure all 4 of the bolts are lined up, because you can put it on there where, you know, the bolt holes don't exactly line up. And I would say get 2 in there, and then take, you know, take them out, put the top Loctite back on there one at a time, and put them back in. Let me see if I can get video doing what I mean. Need 2 hands. I would say get like maybe 2 or 3 bolts in, so that you have something to hold them in place while you're twisting it around. You don't have to screw them all the way in.
So once you get that third bolt in on your last bolt, get your Loctite, put it on the bolt, screw it in. And then, like I said, you can take the rest of them back out one at a time. Put the Loctite on there. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of room to get a ratchet in here, so you might want to invest in an 8mm, just regular old Allen. That way you can fit it in there and make sure you can get enough torque on the boat. Pretty much the same basic idea on the differential side. You see this part slides back and forth. So you want to make sure you got those bolt holes lined up in the right place. All right, to get the rear shaft off, what I had to do was, you can't slide this piece all the way flush with the mounting bracket because the bolts will be in here and you can't go in. They'll be crooked when you try and put them in. So what I had to do was pull it back, put the bolts in, screw them in, and then I have enough room and they'll go in straight. Make sure you don't cross any thread or anything or mess up any threads. But that's how I got this rear piece on. So I'm gonna do like I did last time and start with the Loctite, and then get these guys torqued down, and then the drive shaft should be all the way up. All right, the last part is tightening down all these bolts here. What I did is I got a regular 8mm Allen. This one says 5/16, but 8mm is the same. Just stick it in there. Make sure that the transmission is in park. That way you can put some torque on it. What I did is I took a socket and a long extension, put it on here. And that way you can get in there and get some bite on this thing. I'd like to get you a better shot, but I'm not gonna lift, so I only got so much room I can get in here. But one thing I will say to do is make sure you check the torque on these bolts twice. So get them tightened down, spin them, do the other two bolts, tighten those down, and then spin it back around and check those bolts and make sure they're completely bolted down, because you know when you do one side, it can loosen up the other side. So make sure you do it at least more than once. Check and make sure you know the clearances. Make sure you got enough room between the e-brake cable and the drive shaft. This is a solid piece. It shouldn't flex or anything. So just moving those cables out of the way a little bit should be enough. And make sure you got all the bolts in. And that's what your one-piece drive shaft should look like when you're done.
All right, that's pretty much the end of the project. I guess I want to go over some of the problems that I had. The biggest problem was the rear shock. When I tried to reuse my 335 Megan shock, I could not. When I put the spring perch that the shock is bolted onto, it was pushed out about a good 1.5 inches from where the mounting hole was. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's just the difference in where the spring purchase work at or whatever. But so what I pretty much ended up having to do was buy some shocks for an M3 rear end, basically. So I ended up going with some Bilstein B8 sport shocks. I think for right now, just to get the car back on its wheels and rolling, I'm going to use the stock spring, but I've got my eye on some HR sport lowering springs. But thing about that is I have to order the springs for an XI model. So if you do this yourself, keep that in mind, that you'll probably have to get an M3 suspension in the rear and 335 XI suspension shocks or coils or whatever you want to go with for the front. I would have liked to just, bought some Megan M3 coilovers or whatever set up, but when I called the guy at the Megan, pretty much, he said it would take a few months for them to just, I guess, one-off make the M3 shocks just, for the car. They couldn't just take it out of a different package and send it to me. Seems stupid to me, but whatever. So, yeah, I guess that's the end of this video. If you have any questions, write them down in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you found anything useful or whimsical about this damn video. I guess speaking of the suspension, here's a mounting stuff I just got from Amazon. I had to come in here and wait for them to show up. Yeah, so, stay tuned. Got another project right behind this one. Hopefully it won't take me as long to get back onto it. So, almost there, y'all. Almost back on the road. Hopefully I won't end up wasting the whole summer with this car on jack stand. Love you. Peace.
Back in the day, couldn't pay for nothing, drinking water from different fountains. I get in trouble by staring at somebody, and now they got police trying to get me. Man.